Welcome to the March 30th, 2017 episode of Reactive Consciousness, our in-depth podcast about what happened this week in pop culture. I am your host, VyseTheBold, and this is...
This is
Introduce yourself before I do it.
Before it's too late. It's Lotus Prince.
And I'm PyroJackFrost.
Nice. So we have another great show and some really cool things to talk about this week. I actually really think we have some pretty neat topics to talk about this time around. So take it away, Pyro. I know you have a little bit of an update here.
So as of this podcast coming out, we are less than a week away from Persona 5.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know who listens to this podcast, so I don't know if I should be saying this, but I will be able to play like all day next week.
Oh, are you taking the day off? Is that what you're doing?
No, I feel a cold coming on.
Oh, okay. I see. That was kind of
so
like...
I'm going to be in bed the whole day. I'm not going to be playing any games.
I see.
That's good to know.
You better not go on Facebook and tell people about how sick you are.
And then you find out that I get fired from my job.
Yeah.
This is like when Resident Evil 4 came out. I was like, I'm not going to class. Fuck this.
No, I went. I think we talked about this before. Like I went to class, but like as soon as I got off the bus to go home, it was just like, Resident Evil 4. Like I was on that so fast.
So it's one of those things. I can't play the day it comes out. Well, I can't play all day the day it comes out or the day after because I actually have professional development to do because I'm leading professional development. So I actually have a job I need to do. But I know that if I was just in the office, I wouldn't be able to concentrate. And I know that even me giving the PD, I'm gonna be giving it. I'm gonna do a great job, but I'm gonna be thinking the whole time like when I get home. Persona 5, when I get home, Persona 5.
I hope it's going to be one of those situations where, like, you know how when somebody's talking to you while you're writing, you might accidentally write one of the words they said to you? It's going to be like that during your presentation. Like, so, one of the things we need to concentrate on, Persona 5, what? It's just everyone just stares at you.
Well, you see... Jack Frost and the Faces of the Moon.
Well, it's going to be funny because on Tuesday, I'm probably going to be tracking all day.
Yeah.
Like the tracking update on Amazon. I'm going to be like, is it here yet? Is it here yet? And then around lunchtime, let's say, it's going to be here. It's going to arrive. I'm going to be like, okay, well, we have 2 hours left, so let's try to make this quick. Oh, hey, we finished early. Everyone, you can leave.
Yeah, aw shucks, yeah.
The last game that I played that was like this, probably before Zelda, was Metal Gear Solid 5. I was so amped to play that when it came out. I was so excited. I was just like couldn't wait until it was finished downloaded because I got the PC version. So and I had a day off. And unfortunately, I couldn't download it quick enough for that day off, so I missed it the whole day because of that.
Yeah, that's why. I was thinking if I could take a day off from work to play this game, I was thinking that it wouldn't be Tuesday because I wouldn't have it the whole day. So the best day to play a game for the whole day is the day after it comes out.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because you have it and you've downloaded it or whatever, and you can actually wake up, play it until you go to bed if you really want to do something like that.
Depending what the game is, depending what system you're on or PC or whatever, don't they? I mean, I know Steam allows you to you can't play it, but you can pre-download it. Yeah.
Some games do. I bought the physical copy of Persona 5, so I wouldn't be able to do that.
That's a good point, actually. Same with me.
Unless because I don't know if you've heard, but technically Persona 5 is already out. Someone that I know, his friend already bought Persona 5 at a store and has been playing it since Tuesday of last week.
That's such a bitch when pre-ordering is like you gotta wait for shipping, so you ironically get it later than people who just walk into the store without having jumped on.
It was actually kind of funny. I was considering going to that store, buying a copy, and then returning it when I got my copy.
Oh, interesting.
Because I got the special, I got the everything edition.
Yes, so did
which I couldn't get from that. So I was actually considering doing that, but I'm like, you know what? I've waited this long. I can wait another 2 weeks.
Yeah, I actually did that with some of the Danganronpa collector's editions of the PS4. Like, the thing is, though, I bought a couple of them, and they come out at different times. And I ordered them all at once to save on shipping, so I'm going to get them when the last thing comes out. So I've seen 1 and 2 for the PS4 just chilling on the shelves, and it's like, I won't be seeing that until, like, Ultra Despair Girls comes out or whatever. It's like, great.
One quick thing here, Lotus. I don't know if you heard about this, but speaking of visual novels that we like, the Nonary games just came out, and they're raving about that version of 999.
Yeah, I was actually going to
looking
bring
at
up the
that
Nonary
too.
games because they're out, but I think the physical one is being delayed a little bit, and I was kind of driving myself crazy because I was making sure there wasn't something wrong. You know, like, I was checking my pre-order status, and it kept saying, status, open. And I'm like, okay, what does open mean? And it's like, well, it hasn't been shipped yet. And I'm like, why wouldn't it have been shipped yet? You know, it's out on Steam, it's out on PSN. And so I actually, it got to the point where, like, a few days of this went by. And I'm like, when was the release date? No, it was the 23rd. So, like, I Googled it, and they're like, oh, the physical version was delayed. That was actually a relief, but I was like, don't even tell me something went wrong with my pre-order because I haven't seen it around.
Yeah, I actually saw that too, and I haven't played any of those games, but I'm kind of glad this came out because, again, when I'm finished all the other games that I want to play, I have been wanting to play the Nonary collection because it's made by the same people who did
it's Spike Chunsoft, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact,
I heard they're
Danganronpa's
good,
there are a couple of Danganronpa achievements, or at least one that directly references this. Like, one of them is for like all the coin. Yeah, when you get all the coins, it says something like. There's a 999 joke in there somewhere.
Oh yes, I did know that. I did know that one.
But yeah, I'm sorry. Do go on.
Back to Persona 5. I'm really looking forward to it, and it's actually kind of funny because as the days go on, I keep thinking about how much I'm gonna love the game, which might make it even worse when it comes out. But I have played it. I think I mentioned last time we talked about this that I played at my friend's house who has a Japanese version, and even playing in Japanese, I was like, "This is awesome." Mm-hmm. So I just know that I will have a lot to talk about probably next weekend and for the next several weekends.
Yeah, I really want to hear what you have to say about it. I hope you end up really loving it as much as you do because it's been a long time coming. I mean, they pretty much skipped the whole PS360 generation.
That is true, actually. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, like Persona 4 was on the PS2.
Another thing that like a lot of people complained about all the Persona 4 games that came out. And I don't mean like Golden. I mean the
like Arena.
Dancing game and Arena, and I actually
Dancing
enjoyed them.
Night.
I beat Dancing All Night. I didn't beat either of the Arena games or Persona Q, but I didn't mind that they released all them because they were good games that were sating my appetite until 5 came out.
Wait, was Q part of the 4 universe?
No, it's like an alternate universe.
Okay.
Because it has the 4 and the 3 characters in it.
Oh, okay.
And it's pretty much an Etrian Odyssey game.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and that's why I didn't beat it because I was hoping that I would be able to beat an Etrian Odyssey game if it was themed with Persona, but I wasn't able to get a hold of it to get to it.
Mm.
But also, it's making me like this wait for Persona 5 has been making me want to play other Mega 10 games too. I don't know if either of you heard, but they're remaking Strange Journey for 3DS, and they're calling it Deep Strange Journey or something like that, or Strange Deep Journey, or I don't really know.
What is Journey?
Strange Journey was a game for DS that was, I don't really know how to explain it, but it was kind of like Etrian Odyssey because you had to draw your maps, but it was a lot more Mega 10 kind of battle system.
Sorry, I'm really not very knowledgeable with any of the handheld libraries.
Lotus, a lot of people at the time thought so highly of it that they pretty much were thinking of it as Shin Megami Tensei 4.
Wow.
Like, when it was
has quality. That's crazy.
That's what people thought it was a core game until they actually came out and said that no, it's not a core game. We're actually working on 4 now.
Oh jeez, that must have blown my mind.
I was actually never able to finish that game because it was kind of difficult. I guess you could actually consider it a lot more like a. I want to say it's like a roguelike in a way, because not a roguelike, a wizardry kind of game, because you had to, which I guess you could say the Etrian Odyssey games are like. You have to explore the map, and there's traps all over that you can't see. What was really
you walk
annoying,
onto a square, like gas came out, and you deal 10 damage or whatever.
Yeah, what I didn't like about it that really kind of ruined my fun when I played it was when you fight enemies. The first time you fight an enemy, you don't know what enemy it is.
Oh.
So you have to guess what the weaknesses are. Whereas if you play most games, you can see an enemy and be like, oh, I fought this enemy before in other games, so I can kind of guess what its weakness is.
Wait, so is it like a big question mark until you punch it and you can see what it is?
It's like static. It's like static, you could say. But no, it's not even when you punch it. You had to defeat it.
Oh my god, that's brutal.
Which is annoying because if you fight something that reflects, let's say, fire, and you throw a high damage dealing fire spell at it, it could kill a party member, let's say.
So that's annoying. So you either have to gamble or throw what is guaranteed to do no damage because it's a weak something, just to see if it works.
And then open yourself up for it hitting you for lots of damage. So,
yeah, like basically have one guy do the weak thing and like everybody else block and hope it hits one of them.
Yeah, so I didn't enjoy it that much, but when now that they're going to remake it, I will probably pick it up for 3DS, and I will hopefully be able to play it and beat it. But yeah, it's funny that Persona 5 is out in a week, or less than a week, and they already announced a new Mega 10 game that I'm going to want to play. I still haven't beaten so many of them that, wow. But yeah, so that's Persona 5 talk, and there's going to be more of it when I actually get my hands on it.
Nice. So, I'm like I said, I'm excited to hear you talk about it. It's not the game that I'm gonna delve in like feet first, but I definitely want to have it. You know what I mean? Because I know it's going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it, because it's your jam, for sure. Now, having said that, I do want to move on to my segment here. So this week I had another presentation for King Kong for my cinema studies program. Last time I did Blade Runner, and the time before that I did Aliens. Alien, the original Alien. And
I'm glad that it's this one happened quicker to the last one, or more closely to the last one, because I know you waited a while between the first two.
Yeah. So what had happened there was, the holidays just got in the way. That's really what happened there. But so there is some reservations I have about this one. Number one being that it didn't actually happen. One of my big complaints with doing these presentations was that the audience has always been provided by me.
Yeah, you might as well just have people over at your house or something at that point.
Well, my friends enjoy indulging me, and also like finding out what I like to learn about what I've learned about these movies to begin with. So
yeah,
like finding friends that were willing to watch a movie and talk about it afterwards aren't in very short supply. I have quite a bit of friends that love analyzing things in general, and so and they love talking about this kind of thing. Having a situation in which I'm having like a classroom situation is kind of weird with just your friends. It's cool because it's like it's giving me an outlet in order to put a lot of effort into these presentations, but it's really disappointing because the whole point of it is to do something for the community.
It's an outlet, but at the same time, if you really wanted to, you could do this research and just have friends over and do it with them.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, like if you provide the audience yourself, it's like, what is this like? The fact that it's at the library is like, what is that even really doing for you?
And from what it sounds like, they're not really helping out that much.
No. Yeah, in fact, a lot of it is very poorly thought through on their end. In fact, the only reason why a lot of these get done is because of the contingencies that I think of, because I'm like, okay, I don't trust them not to fuck up.
Yeah.
And
Which
and
is
it
sad.
ends up every single time that I'm the one who saves it with how prepared I am. So the first one I did was first of all, the first one I ever did was Jaws, and because it took them so long to get their stuff together, they didn't end up wanting to do Jaws anymore because it wasn't summer anymore. It ended up being October by the time they got their stuff together, and so they wanted a horror movie, so I did Alien, and only one person showed up, and it was my friend Noisy Doll. That's her internet name, and that was, and there were a whole bunch of technical issues, which I won't go over again, but a whole bunch of them. But it was good that it happened so I could iron them all out for the next one. The next one I had the biggest audience that I ever had, but again, it was my friends and family. My dad has I turned my dad on to Blade Runner. He for a long time did not like the film, and then as I was growing older and became a cinema studies student, we watched it on TV one time, and he was asking me what I thought about it. And I would point out certain things to him, and he just needed a push in the right direction in getting in starting his own analysis of the film. So that's a movie that that has a lot of subtlety in it and a lot of extra meaning. And interpretive meaning. So it's a really good movie to study. And so that was, and it's also a movie that is hard to understand unless you do that. So therefore, my dad has since fallen in love with the movie, and it's a big triumph for me because he typically doesn't like a lot of the art house films that I like. He likes a lot of really good movies, but he doesn't like a lot of the the funky stuff. And so it's great that this is an art house type film. It's not a mainstream film. It kind of masquerades as a mainstream film. You think it's going to be one when
the sequel will be.
With any luck, it won't be, but people will perceive it as a mainstream film and go to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I digress. I turned him on to a movie that he normally wouldn't like, and he likes it in the most complex ways. Like it's not just he just likes it. He thinks about it every time he watches it, and we also have a really nice memory of it in that we watched it on the side of a building in Montreal during a film festival, outside in the warm air in the cool.
Oh,
night.
Nice!
It was a really cool time when we went on vacation in Montreal. So I watched it with my parents there, and it was a really good time. So anyway, my parents showed up to that one along with a friend and her significant other, and Noisy Doll came again. Nobody else. And this is supposed to be for the library. Like, this is supposed to be for people.
That's the thing. Yeah, you'd think they would advertise.
So, the only thing that's been saving my presentations is the fact that I've been advertising to my friends that they've been wanting to support me. And also, hear what I have to say. So this third one, absolutely nobody showed up. I mean, It's partially my fault because I didn't advertise it to my friends, but I've actually been getting to the point where I don't want to just that's not the point. The point, it's not their fault.
Well, yeah, like we said, if it's just
fault.
your friends, then just have them over at your house and just cut this whole middleman thing out of the way.
Exactly. So therefore, I kind of I wanted to see where this was going to go because I put a lot of effort into this. I first of all, I buy the movie every time every movie that I want to show because I don't expect them to be organized enough to actually have the movie there waiting for me, which they've said they were going to, but they never did. So I've always bought it on Amazon Video and stream it out of my laptop. So yeah, even I provide everything but the projector essentially in the sitting space.
Actually, you know what? I have a question here. Have you tried another library?
Well, that is actually my conclusion.
Okay. Because there's usually, it's not like there's one for miles and miles and miles. Like there's usually a couple you could choose from.
So my idea here is that I am very proud of the product that I've created, the thing that, the presentations that I've done. I do not think they are at fault for why they're not successful. I think it's a lack of interest from the community, and also a lack of targeting the right people on the behalf of the library. I think maybe a different town that has people with different tastes would be better, first of all. And second of all, I think maybe even an urban area where there's a lot of different type of people that may be more into artsy stuff, or also a college town.
Yeah, small towns might not be the best for this sort of thing.
The good thing is that Glassboro is a college town. It's where I went, but it's not that kind of college. It's not a very artsy type college, I would say. It's very much a type of college that you don't even hang out at during the weekends. Let's say that at Rowan University, it's a good college. It's a great college. That's where I got my MBA, but it's not the kind of college that has like a thriving art culture. Let's just say that. Anyway, I'm very proud of the presentation I put together here for King Kong. So I did the original. The idea was that the library suggested that I do King Kong because King Kong on Skull Island just came out.
Yeah, it's coming out. Yeah. Oh, it just came out. Okay.
It just came out last week. And from all accounts, it's not good.
Really?
Oh, really? The Skull Island
The
one?
only accounts I have heard said that it was good.
Yeah, I've heard it was mediocre. No, maybe not.
From what I heard, it was terrible. A really good movie, but it's not a traditional King Kong movie. It's a B monster movie starring King Kong. Like, so if you look
I'm
at
okay
it,
with that.
So yeah, it's King Kong in like Vietnam era, like Skull Island. Like oh shit, it's King Kong. Like, so it's more of like a monster movie than a King Kong movie. Like I've heard from the Cinema Snob and from James Rolfe, the King Kong like ultra nerd, that they liked it.
Yeah, I'm okay with that approach, and I'll go into that as to why I'm okay with that approach, and I would probably like it if that's the case. So this movie is not one that has a lot of subtext. It was not made to be an art house film. It was made to be a blockbuster. So there's not a lot to study with in terms of, Alien has a lot of like symbolism and things like that, and Blade Runner and 2001: Space Odyssey and other art house movies like it have a lot of symbolism and a lot of interpretation to do. This is a relatively simplistic story. You could do cultural studies on it, like on it being a product of its time. There's certainly a lot of sexism and racism and not culturally sensitive things going on in the movie, for sure. But you can mostly look at it as a historical movie. I mean, when watching it, I still marvel at some of the special effects. Some of the special effects are really great in this film, and they always work, and they always will hold up as something special. There's, unlike other gigantic monster movies that happen later on, notably Godzilla and everything following Godzilla, this is mostly stop animation. The gorilla is stop animation rather than a guy in a rubber suit. In fact, King Kong is never a guy in a gorilla suit. He is either stop animation or he is an animatronic.
Yeah, there's like a prop hand or a prop foot or like a prop face for that close up.
Exactly.
I've never actually seen the original. So...
Oh, it's amazing. And by the way, one of the famous scenes in that movie is where he fights like a T-Rex.
I'm gonna go over that.
Yeah, I mean, just TLDR. Not only is that a really spectacular fight in terms of stop motion animation, but it's more violent than some violent stuff you've seen. I was gonna go over that.
Yeah, yeah. I was actually going to say that the violence in the film is actually very graphic. You see people getting chewed on,
stepped
on. You see people getting dropping into pits and actually bouncing on the ground when they hit.
Oh wow!
And going ragdoll. Yeah. You see people get eaten like just straight up eaten. Like you can see them being chewed on. So Lotus is referencing actually one thing that I found shocking about the film. It's very graphic in its violence. And you never think it would be that way.
Yeah, clay figures fighting makes you cringe. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. So in it, King Kong fights a Tyrannosaurus Rex, later referred to as a V-Rex because it's not anatomically correct.
Yeah, the tail's dragging.
Yeah, not only that, but its arms are too big. But anyway, but yeah, that's just kind of a footnote in history. But
yeah.
So King Kong actually like separates the T-Rex's jaw from its.
Yeah, he just he keeps
face.
pulling it open, and like not like it's surprisingly gross even from a visual perspective, even though it's clay. But also, believe it or not, the sound design, like those cracks are horrible. Like you just hear them, and it's just like, oh my god, he's already dead. Leave him alone.
Yeah, that's actually part of what makes the movie great is the sound design. The sound design was very unique for the time. It's a pretty early talkie film. When silent films were just being phased out. So it came out in 1933. So it is, I think, the first American film, first American talkie to have its own score made for it.
Oh, wow.
So, like, the music is particularly great and grandiose and very fitting, and some of the best, like, the movie is like incredibly enhanced by the soundtrack. It's really really good, and the movie kind of goes from one action scene to the next. It really hums along. Like once you get to Skull Island, like it takes a little while to get to Skull Island in that movie. Like they're just setting up.
Yeah, they're on a boat talking.
Yeah. But once they get there, it's like they go from one disaster to another. I mean, they fight one big thing and go on to the next.
And it's basically Jurassic Park: The Lost World, where you go to Dinosaur Island and you're like, oh, this sucks, but let's stupidly bring one of these home with us. And then the dinosaur wreaks havoc on, like, well, L.A. and The Lost World, but I think what was it? Yeah, of course, it was New York City and King Kong.
Well, it's funny that you say that because the guy who did the stop animation actually did an adaptation of the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle version of Lost World.
Oh, that's fantastic. I was talking about Michael Crichton's Lost World. That's amazing.
I understand what you meant, but that's named after that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle book.
And by the way, speaking of the guy who did the animation, I heard he was like the inspiration and possibly even mentor for Ray Harryhausen, the guy who like is Mr. Stop Animation.
Yeah, Willis O'Brien is a very famous now special effects engineer. He basically was a very early big player in stop animation. He was able to make very minute movements and make a lot of these characters very realistic. It's just really amazing what he did. And at the time, there was no Academy Award for special effects. So he never got the recognition he deserved for this movie in particular. He ended up getting it for kind of what is an unofficial sequel called Mighty Joe Young.
Right,
I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I've seen the remake, which was all right, but I heard the original was quite good as well.
Yeah, so he did a number of kind of like spiritual successors. One of them being the actual sequel to King Kong called Son of Kong. But then Mighty Joe Young was like the big spiritual successor that people actually liked. Son of Kong doesn't have much love, but in fact you barely ever hear about it. But the animation that he did in Mighty Joe Young actually won him an Oscar.
Well, I think it was like even crazier than in King Kong in some ways. Regarding the way he like worked, like the way he like manipulated objects that humans were near and things like that.
Yeah, some people say that movie probably has some of the best stop animation ever made, even nowadays.
Oh, and by the way, one thing sort of relevant to the stop animation itself, but more about the clay figures. I don't know how true this is, but my brother's told me a couple times that when the people who made like the original King Kong were in the theater like watching their own movie with the audience to see like what's the audience gonna think, you know, like in the producer, like in the producers. Well, let's see how that is. Apparently, like they noticed that, like, remember, it's a clay figure. You're supposed to be able to manipulate it, and it's supposed to be malleable. The animators noticed, oh my god, we left our fingerprints on a lot of parts of this. But they're watching the movie, they're like, oh shit, was everything for nothing? But apparently, like, one guy like was watching King Kong move, and he did see the prints, but he didn't recognize them for what they were. And he was like, my god, like, he's so angry, his fur is bristling. And the animators were like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a really great special effects masterpiece. It's a very big budget film for the time. It was made on a budget of $600,000. For at the time, that was huge.
Yeah, for 33, my god, like, is there even such amount of money?
But just to give you an idea, it made over $2 million in the box office.
That is absurd.
And for back then, god damn, that was gigantic.
A lot of money.
Yeah, so and the movie is very meta as well. It's all about a movie director who wants the spectacle of whatever's on this island to be part of his next movie and to make it big. And he ends up bringing home Kong when he finds him after like knocking him out and taking him back there. And so in essence, the movie that you're watching is the spectacle in which the director is creating. So
come to think of it, there are lots of movies that are movies about making movies. Even though that's the basic premise of King Kong, that just never really occurred to me that it was one of those. I always just think of the part with King Kong, so it's kind of like, that's also in that I don't know if I'd call it a genre, but that type of movie.
Yeah, it's pretty cool in that it acknowledges its own spectacle, which is pretty neat. And it acknowledges that it's something big and special, and that it was going to be popular, and it was.
Mm-hmm. Like it reminds me almost of Silent Movie, where you don't get to see the final product, but you still are watching a silent movie with a bunch of famous actors that are going to make a silent movie. So it's like, okay.
Another thing to mention is that the film also was an early user of techniques that are very similar to green screening now. So they would film like a lot of the live action shots in front of black sheets, and then they would kind of trace around them and place them on the stop animated cells later. So it was pretty cool in what they did with transposing the stop animation with the live action. And there's some really cool scenes where props will get thrown from the background in stop animation and then land in the foreground.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Live action. There's some really cool stuff going on. Like, it just reminds you of Turtles in Time.
When you throw them in the screen.
Yeah, basically there's this one scene in particular where Kong is rampaging on Skull Island, where he like throws like a crate, and it goes from the background into the foreground like very seamlessly.
That's
like you're like
nuts.
Wow. And like even nowadays it still looks freaking great. I mean, it's just one of those things that practical effects, like certain practical effects, don't get old.
Yeah, actually, you know what that makes me think of? I had seen on the internet a whole thing about how like Who Framed Roger Rabbit was all the more convincing because they had so many machines designed to do things in real life. Like, they would break a glass window when Roger Rabbit was thrown through it, instead of just having him thrown through a cartoon window, for example. Like, they wanted as much real stuff for him to integrate with as possible. Like I remember there's a little machine that just squirted a little stream of water, so like when he gets dunked into the sink, he spits out like real water, and it looks good. It just makes me think of stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another another type of movie that kind of, I think, is kind of almost a progenitor of this kind of movie, for sure. And just in terms of special effects and blending animation with live action, I think
like Space Jam.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real pioneer. I mean, just in case you ever wanted a sequel to Nike commercials. But I did want to let you know what kind of movie this was like a product of, the kind of time this was a product of. Like the director basically thought up of the story all himself.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, it was just one of
Wow.
those things where he just told a screenwriter to make the movie that he had thought of.
That's awesome.
And like he thought of it like he was really into monkeys. Like monkeys and gorillas were really popular at zoos at the time, and jungle movies were really popular. So he had this movie planned where he wanted to get actual gorillas to fight real Komodo dragons.
That's insane.
And it was during the Great Depression, so like there was no way that they could go on location and even make that happen. Also, like, think of the animal cruelty there.
Yeah.
Not to mention that Komodo dragons are big, but not gorilla big. Like, they are pretty damn big, but like gorilla.
I don't know. They're pretty big. Komodo dragons are gigantic. I don't know, but I would actually think that the gorilla would die.
Well, no, it would.
Komodo dragons are deadly.
Well, yeah. Komodo dragons bite you, and then they walk away, and then you die. Like, they will follow you for days until you die. Well, they can use the tail, but like their go-to move is biting you once and then just waiting for days. And it's just like, oh god, they are just swimming in diseases.
One of the things that I also wanted to point out was that there's a spider scene that got cut out of the film pretty famously. So in the movie, a bunch of sailors are trying to save the damsel in distress, and played by Fay Wray, and they drop off of a log that Kong is shaking, and they fall into a pit, and that's where you see them bounce. And like it looks brutal. Like they definitely died or like are almost dead by falling into this pit. Well, there's a scene that even makes it even more brutal, where a bunch of gigantic creatures, including a gigantic spider, come out and eat the survivors of that.
Yeah, that's one thing. Like, King Kong himself is so famous, but I don't know. At least for me, it's a little easy to forget that everything on that island is gigantic and wants you dead. Like, there's lots of crazy stuff. And by the way, in the 2005 Peter Jackson King Kong, they did have that scene with like the giant spiders and everything. And if you didn't know any better, you'd be just like, oh, now he's padding the movie with this. But that was an homage to a scene that didn't end up properly existing in the original release.
Yeah. Well, no, the original release had it, and it was
cut. Yeah. So people didn't see it, I guess.
So all known versions of that have that scene cut out. It's only known because people talked about it. So they have some of like the animatics and things like that, but they don't have the full scene. I think they had like the stop animation for it, but they didn't have the live action for it or something like that.
Can you imagine seeing that in the theater? Yeah,
and they ended up piecing together new live action into the old scene. Peter Jackson ended up recreating the scene. So I was going to show that. And I did want to talk about the lasting impact of it. So there have been tons of sequels and remakes and spin-offs of King Kong, but none of them have really stood the test of time. There's been a couple notable remakes, one in the 70s, which ended up, most people don't like it anymore at all. And
that was one I remember I would always see the cover of for the VHS, I think at the library or something, and I was like, is this a sequel? Like, this is crazy. Like the cover was pretty badass. It was King Kong straddling like the Twin Towers. It looked freaking cool, but I never ended up seeing the movie.
In the original, the showdown happens at the Empire State Building in that one, the Twin Towers.
I heard that the 70s one was serviceable, but like we already have a superior King Kong movie, so it's like
Well, what my point was is that this is a special effects spectacular. What made this movie great was its time and place, and what breakthroughs it made, and how much fun it ended up being because of that. Like all these really great elements of new things and all this like innovation, and no other movie has really been able to add to that or really emulate that, because even the Peter Jackson one, it's a good remake. It's not a bad one. In fact, it's a little too epic, I guess, is a complaint.
I can see that, and it does go on. It is notoriously
That's
long.
what I mean. It's a little grandiose, right? Whereas the original wasn't very bloated at all. It has a lot of love behind it, but it's not a cultural touchstone. People aren't going to go back and study that one. They're going to go study the original, right? They're not going to study the remake.
Well, that's the thing.
So,
with the remake, you watch that movie, and you think to yourself, "Wow, I see how much the director loved the original King Kong."
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess my point was that the good stuff that's come out of King Kong has not really been the sequels and the spin-offs. It's been the things that it's inspired. And I listed Donkey Kong, first of all, being like kind of like a parody kind of King Kong, but also like Shadow of the Colossus is very much a King Kong story.
I never thought of that. Yeah. That makes sense.
So yeah, I mean, in the end of King Kong, you feel really bad for King Kong because he was taken out of his home. I mean, he's just a fault.
Yeah, he's just a gorilla being a gorilla. It's just that he happens to be 1,000,000 feet tall.
It's the filmmaker's fault.
Yeah,
the entire movie happened. It is not his fault that he died. It's not his fault that he was rampaging through New York. It's not even his fault that he kidnapped the girl. I mean, like you put her in this situation. Like she was literally up there on the sacrificial altar where everyone else who goes there is his. So it's like, well, he's just doing what he does at that point. He knew what the dangers were in going and bringing her, that kind of thing, and put her in danger and begin with. So by the end of it, you kind of feel bad for King Kong, also by the way he's animated. Like he is clearly getting hurt and is heartbroken that he can't be with the girl by the time he dies. Like he's animated very sympathetically. So Shadow of the Colossus is very much like that, where you are destroying something gigantic and beautiful that you have no business even interacting with. So I also have Iron Giant, which is very much a King Kong story.
That was a gut punch at the end.
And is very similar in a lot of ways, but is good on its own.
That is
really great on its own.
Brilliant movie.
It's one of those movies that not enough people have seen. It's an animated feature that still looks great, even though there's a lot of early CG in it.
But it's done right. It's done in a way that makes it work. Like The Mask had a lot of early CG, but it was supposed to look like a cartoon. So we're like, okay,
exactly. So Iron Giant is very much a very similar, like sympathetic giant story, but this time with a child rather than a girl. But it has a lot of really nostalgic, awesome, heartwarming moments. So I wanted to point out that the good stuff that it's come out of this has been inspiration. It's not been like somebody trying to emulate it. And one more quick thing. I also wanted to mention King Kong versus Godzilla, because this is one of those mashups that you think would have been fake that actually happened. So Toho, the company that makes Godzilla, got the rights to make a King Kong versus Godzilla movie, and it was back in the 60s. It was in color. It, by today's standard, even back then, was hokey. But hokey in the best way possible that a kaiju movie can be. You cannot watch it in expecting a King Kong movie. You are watching it as if you were watching a Godzilla movie.
With King Kong.
A cheesy one on purpose kind of movie. It's made kind of with the conceit that it's goofy, but it's still fun.
Well, yeah, this was during Godzilla's hokey years, wasn't it? Because Godzilla originally was like a horror movie monster, but then like eventually he got just wacky and like he's the defender of Japan against whatever the hell this is,
Well, originally
I always found him a little wacky, but
the original movie was dark.
Yeah, the original Gojira or Godzilla is an allegory for post-war Japan. You know,
he's literally a nuclear monster that wrecks cities.
Yeah,
he's more of a a force of nature rather than a character, and it's something that people just have to deal with. But later on, he becomes like a good guy, for somehow, and then becomes evil every once in a while, and then a good guy again. Like he usually ends up defending Japan as his territory against other gigantic monsters.
Yeah, he's not really like the friend of the children, like Gamera or whatever.
Like Gamera.
Yeah, Godzilla is just more like, no, I'm the best monster around, and like any humans who die, like, shouldn't have been standing there.
Yeah. So anyway, I did point that out, and that's actually the whole reason why, and that movie is fun to watch if you just want a fun, goofy movie, and you know what you're getting into, but it is not a sequel or a successor to King Kong in the slightest. And it's a rubber suit movie. It's not a stop animation movie in the slightest. But one thing, those movies are great for wrestling moves and just like really cool sets that people are in. The original King Kong was actually like miniatures, like small.
Yeah,
these are like they're small but not that small. Like you can walk through them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I did want to point that out because the whole reason why Skull Island is being made is so that it can tie in with a Godzilla versus King Kong movie later on.
Yeah, that's what I heard about.
That ties into the universe with the Godzilla movie from last year, the Bryan Cranston one. So yeah, that's all supposed to be leading up to a shared universe movie that isn't as hokey, I would assume. But I that's the whole reason why we have that King Kong movie, is because it's a successor to that old Toho movie. So I just wanted to go over that kind of stuff. I mean, there's very little analysis to go on, but I mean, it seems like kaiju are kind of coming back in a way. I mean, you have Power Rangers that just came out as well, which I'm sure we'll want to talk about in the future. But and you had Pacific Rim a couple years ago, and the second one is coming out.
It's coming out,
sometime soon. So I think more people are getting into maybe different types of giant monster stuff going on.
I think it's also because the people who are now directing movies were into these movies when they were a kid, so they're finally getting to make these decisions.
It's the 25-30 year phenomenon, right? Like that always seems to happen. Look at those 90s comic book movies. No, let me show you how it's done,
Yeah, so having said that, it is my last presentation. I'm not going to do any more of these anymore because as much as I like doing them and as much as I like exploring these films, it's a lot of work. And when I don't have anybody in my audience besides, I mean, I do it for the podcast and that's cool, but I put a lot of work into the PowerPoint presentation and the actual effort putting through the whole presentation in a visual way. It's a shame that I don't get to share it with anybody. So
yeah,
I am definitely going to talk to them about maybe this just isn't the place for it. So I'm gonna want to continue to get this as an outlet and do more analysis and more research, but I certainly I don't want to do it this way anymore because it's not cool to have something that you work this hard on and then it doesn't pay off, Yeah.
Yep.
Although, I mean, I guess the one good thing is if you do want to find another venue for this, you still have...
I have 4 lesson plans all worked up.
That's the thing, yeah. You still have...
You had the first 4 done.
Yeah, you could basically do all of them, but especially King Kong, because, no one's seen it.
Yeah, I mean, also, well, here's the thing about cinema studies, is that seeing it in a context at home and then being told this is the way you need to start looking at it, you need to start questioning little details, you can end up watching a whole new movie that you've already seen before.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan of that as well, especially if you already know a film really well. I just saw a recent analysis on 2001: Space Odyssey. You guys know that that's my favorite movie.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a recent analysis on YouTube by this guy that comes out with some really great cinema studies presentations, and he blew my mind with something that I think he's right about, and that I never guessed before. And so I'm not even going to say what it is because I'm not going to get into that. But even movies that you've already seen before, being taught and also being led into how you can look at it differently, and it can really enrich your experience. And I'm a fan of that. And it's, especially in a classroom setting where you can only really view a movie once, if you've already seen it, it makes it that much better. So I am a fan of that. But having said that, I maybe one of these days I might become like an adjunct or something like that to teach it in college, because I would love to do it in a context in which people wanted to be there, and experience it. So I think that's all I have to add about this, pretty much.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think that takes up our time. You know, I hope people liked the research that I did here on King Kong. Please remember to subscribe to the Corrective Consciousness YouTube and SoundCloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs up, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It helps us promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Tuesday for our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the podcast about our lives and pop culture. Finally, I've almost lost my voice, and you can find me at VyseTheBold as VyseTheBold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, and Twitter. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, and you can find me at my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. And you can hit me up as well on Twitter at Lotus Prince, all one word, LOTUSPRINCE.
And you can find me as PyroJackFrost on various media.
All right. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you on Tuesday.
Until next time, everyone.
Bye, everyone.